Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about my custom 501st default ARC Trooper from Battlefront 2. As I said, this guy is based off of the default ARC Trooper skin from the video game Battlefront 2, and he's just been color swapped to match the 501st Legion. Originally he had like a brownish color, and all I did was change that to blue, so everything else is pretty much the same. I made this guy using a knockoff clone trooper from AliExpress. This is the plain white version simply because it's the cheapest one, and also it doesn't have any paint markings on it that you have to wipe away, so I can, start fresh with just a blank slate. As I talked about in a previous video, all of these little accessories and the helmet were printed by DS Artwork and more on Instagram, so if you want to have a better look at them in their raw, unpainted form, then you can check out that video. So I do want to give just a disclaimer, this is one of my first complete figures using like a kit. I did make a few customs like that one back there, but that was just a very basic amount of accessories, so it wasn't anything major. This one had a ton of more little things to glue on, and I definitely didn't get everything perfectly straight and aligned like I wanted to, but this was definitely a learning experience, and I think I did a pretty good job. I'm satisfied with it, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Now, there are a few major differences between this guy and his video game counterpart, and I'll go over them in detail. Now, the first major difference I want to talk about is with the helmet. Now, in Battlefront 2, ARC Troopers had a Phase 1 fin on their helmet, and I just don't think that really works canonically, because as we know from ARC Trooper 5s and Jesse in the Clone Wars TV show, they just had regular Clone Trooper helmets like this guy, so that's why I gave them just a regular clone helmet instead of the pointy fin 1.5 helmet version. So when it comes to the official canon of ARC Trooper helmets, things are kind of a mess right now. There's a lot of different variants, and so I'll kind of go over them real quick. So this is the Battlefront 2 style. You've got the Phase 1 fin on the top of the helmet, and then you've got an animated style rangefinder, because it's just bigger and thicker. And then you've got the chin piece, which is just a normal Phase 2 chin piece. And that kind of defines the Battlefront 2 style. Now here's the Umbra ARC Trooper, who is technically wearing a Phase 1.5 ARC Trooper helmet because it has the Phase 1 fin on the top, the animated style rangefinder, and the pointy chin, and has a different little breather piece in the middle, but the chin is pointed on this one, and that sort of denotes the Phase 1.5 style. And for reference, here's what a realistic style rangefinder looks like. It's a bit smaller than the animated style one. Here's like the animated style for comparison. They are just a different design. So this is realistic and animated. And I don't have the Fordo figure, unfortunately, to show you, but that would be a Phase 1 ARC Trooper helmet. It's just a standard Phase 1 helmet with the rangefinder. So as you can probably tell, things are pretty complicated with the helmet alone, but things are only going to get more complicated because the pauldron is also different. If you notice, this is the Battlefront 2 and Clone Wars animated style pauldron, which has like these, a flat center part with little notches in it, and then these sort of triangular pauldrons on the sides. Whereas my custom figure has a different style of pauldron. This is more of a realistic style, which we haven't technically seen in canon yet, but I guess this would be close to what it would be. It probably would not look like the animated style one in live action. Yet another difference between the custom figure that I made versus the Battlefront 2 version are in the shin guards over here. So as you can see, the ones that I have these little ridges in them, 3 of them, and that's not really in the Battlefront 2 version. As you can see, they're more smooth. They do have like that regular clone shin guard underneath, which is the same thing on that one. The reason I chose to put these bigger shin guards on is because I just like the look. I think it makes it look bigger and just adds a more unique style to the ARC Troopers. I did want to point out that the rangefinder on this one is not the original that it came with. I accidentally broke the original and ended up replacing it with this one that can actually move, but it is in the animated style, and originally it did have the realistic style rangefinder, so it is a bit different now. but I still think it looks really good. So the rangefinder can function, as you can see, and I think it looks a lot better just having that functionality. The official Hasbro figure does have that same movability, so I would prefer to have it on mine as well. So the reason that I chose to do a default ARC Trooper instead of like a custom or like a named trooper like ARC Trooper 5s or Echo or Jesse is because I like the idea of there being different classes of troopers on the battlefield at once. Like in Battlefront 2 you have standard troopers, heavy troopers, like the sniper, and in the Clone Wars TV show you see like Kix, who's a medic, and they're just in the group in the battlefield with the other troopers. So I like the idea of having an ARC Trooper in that mix, and just having a default ARC Trooper makes it feel like the army is bigger, I think. Like they can afford to have a lot more ARC Troopers just in reserve. The Clone Wars TV show does a pretty good job of introducing us to a lot of named ARC Troopers, like the ones in Rancor Battalion. However, the show doesn't really introduce many like generic ARC Troopers. It's only the named ones that we really see. I believe in Rancor Battalion there's ARC Commander, Blitz, Havoc, and Colt, but Hammer in the Rancor Battalion is just a generic ARC Trooper, and I like that idea of having just sort of a lower rank ARC Trooper, so they're not all just like named special commanders or whatever. There's not a whole lot of proof about Hammer just being a generic ARC Trooper, but there were a few times, like when the Lego set came out, where he was just named as a generic ARC Trooper that kind of show that he wasn't one of the commanders like the other named characters, and also the fact that he's never mentioned as a commander, whereas the others are. Now that topic is definitely up for debate, but what is for certain is that in Battlefront 2, the ARC Troopers do show up as just a class of clone trooper. They're not like special named characters that you play as, they're just clones like the rest of them. Now the reason why I chose the 501st color scheme is because I really want to grow my 501st Legion, and I think adding just a generic ARC Trooper to that lot will definitely help add to the ranks. The patterns on this guy indicate that he is just a generic ARC Trooper according to Battlefront 2, so he's not quite like 5s or Echo who had special markings. I'm sure they had a special case since they were brought into the 501st by Rex specifically, whereas this guy was probably born to be a 501st ARC Trooper. He didn't have like a special case scenario where he was brought in because of his, heroic actions or anything. He was just born to be this way. And I think that's a nice bit of lore that kind of emphasizes how big the clone army was and how individualistic each clone was. Even though they were clones, they still had individual personalities and stories, and a lot of them came from different parts of the army. They weren't just all, generic clones. They had different legions with different jobs. So this guy being just a 501st ARC Trooper definitely adds to the overall scale of the army. So now let's talk about the Coma, and this is a pretty tricky thing that I had to make. As you can see from the one in the back, that was a cloth Coma that I made from a t-shirt, whereas the ARC Trooper one is very different looking, and that's because I had to make it using electrical tape. I'm sure there's a lot of debate about what material the clone Comas were made of. Some of them are clearly like a fabric material, whereas some of them, like the ARC Troopers, I think have a more plasticky feel to them. I'm sure in universe it depends on like what type of job they have or what class they are, but I really wanted my ARC Trooper to have this sort of different style Coma to denote a different role or position than like this guy back there. You can kind of see some of the lines in the Coma, and that's just because the tape only goes so wide. I had to put several strips in a row in order to create a Coma big enough. So the white is obviously white electrical tape, and the blue is just a blue electrical tape. The blue doesn't quite match up with the paint, but I think that also helps because it shows that it's a different material. The Coma and all the different straps and pouches on it is definitely one of the most complicated parts of this build, but I think it turned out very well, and I'm pretty happy with its posability. It's not like a paralyzed Coma where it has to stay in one spot and you can't move it. You can actually move this one around. It does have a fair bit of flexibility and it does move with the legs, which is really nice. One of the things that I definitely could have done better is with these black pouches matching up with the belt. I had to basically cut the belt and then kind of glue these pouches in between the belt spacing, because on a normal clone they have these white pouches here, so I just had to cut those out entirely and glue these black ones in place, and that's how it should be. But as you can tell, the belt didn't quite match up to where the pouch should be. Another small issue is the little straps on the front are too close together. They should be more farther apart like they are on this one. As you can see, the X is much bigger, whereas here they're just too close together up at the top. And I just didn't quite expect it to be that way when I put the belt on over top. It covered a lot more, or stretched them apart a lot further than I anticipated. I will say that there's a lot of stuff that's glued on underneath of the belt. You've got the Coma, and then you've got the little holster straps glued on top of the Coma, and then you've got these glued on underneath the belt in the front. So all of that going on, and then with the belt going on over top of it, creates a ton of room issues where you have to really force things to go together. I had to shave down the waist underneath a little bit and shave down the belt to create some room, or else they just would not fit together properly. I glued the pouches onto the straps instead of onto the Coma, because I didn't want any conflicting parts. I guess I wanted the Coma to be able to move more freely, and if these were glued on, then it might restrict its movement a little bit. Another small detail that I'm sure most of you know by now, but the official Black Series version of the ARC Trooper does not have these little shoe plates that they should, and this kit does have them. I'm very thankful for that, but I would like to get some extras to maybe put on this one, just to kind of complete the look, because this is kind of a part of the ARC Trooper look, and it feels incomplete without it. And because this guy dual wields pistols, I decided to cut the finger loose so that he can actually hold the pistol properly. A lot of the times, well actually all the times with Clone Trooper figures, their left hand does not have the finger cut free, so he has to hold the pistol awkwardly like this, whereas the other hand can hold it properly. So I decided to cut it free, and now he can hold the pistol properly. Another thing that I wanted to point out is the conflict between the backpack and the pauldron. Because the pauldron is just so big and does take up a lot of space, it does conflict a little bit with the backpack. The backpack is just glued on. I didn't use a magnet with this one because I don't ever plan to take it off. I know sometimes ARC Troopers have jetpacks, but with this case I just wanted to leave it on forever. So that's stuck in place, and the pauldron can move freely a little bit, and this helps with articulation in the arms. When you bring the arms up, that kind of moves it around a little bit, and that just creates more space for you to pose it, and I really like that. Another thing that I did was I glued the ammo pouch onto the pauldron just up here at the top, so that just moves freely with that, and whenever you move his arms around, it just kind of moves out of the way and doesn't break or anything. So that's kind of my solution to this little issue. Also, you may have noticed that the visor is glossy and has a very nice shine to it, and I accomplished that by using a gloss varnish only on the visor area, and I used a matte varnish around everything else to really offset the armor and the visor and just, you know, make it clear that the visor's a different material. So that's about all I wanted to talk about with this guy. I do think he's a great addition to the 501st Legion. I'll probably end up adding some more classes from Battlefront 2 and probably in the 501st Legion colors. I really like the idea of having different classes on the battlefield, and I think that Battlefront 2 does that very well, whereas like the Clone Wars just always seems to have the same kind of generic 501st troopers on the battlefield altogether, with almost no differences between them. That's one of my few criticisms about the Clone Wars, but other than that, I do think this is a great addition to my 501st Legion, and here we have the two different Battlefront 2 ARC Troopers. I think the Umbra ARC Trooper from Hasbro is a great figure, but it is a little lacking in some of the weathering. I think it's just too much black and it kind of hides the detail, so I'll probably end up going and weathering this guy a little bit, but I do think they look pretty good together. So that's all I wanted to show for this video. I really enjoyed making this figure, and I have a lot more customs on the way, so I hope you guys will stick around for those, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.